Welcome to English 123, week 5. So hopefully up to this point you've completed your proposal. Hopefully you know where you want to go with your paper. We should have our sources, uh, maybe not completely set just yet. There may be some that you're still looking for. You may be still looking for just the right source just to complete that last point that you want to make. But generally speaking, at this point, you should have a pretty good, sizable body of research to work with, and you should have a pretty good idea of what you're going to use from those sources. Now, that's just ideally. Again, don't panic just yet. We're not at the end. We're just in week 5. Even though this semester or this session is going to wrap up pretty quickly from here forward, you still have time to find maybe a couple, a source or two. So I'd continue to persevere in that if you're struggling. It's not over till it's over, really. So keep looking, keep searching, keep sifting through sources. Keep reading through the sources that you have found to find those specific quotes that you need. The quoting is going to be very important to really support your thesis. These are the experts that you're using to support what you're arguing. Okay, so remember, you're not the expert, but you're using the experts to support what you're saying. Okay, so right now you should have a handle on your research. You should have some quotes in place, or a database or spreadsheet or a Word document that has some quotes that you pulled. Right now you should have a good working thesis moving forward that you're going to refine. Again, this is the drafting stage, so it doesn't have to be finalized right now. You're still developing that. And right now you should have somewhat of a working outline of where you're going with your paper. Now again, all of these things are still fluid. They're still changeable. They're not set in stone. And that's one thing I want you to kind of attempt to be comfortable with. It can be a little, unsettling, or it can have some anxiety with this stage because you just want it to be done. You just want to know what you're going to say, and you want to know what you're going to put down on paper. But you kind of have to just remain patient with this because it's still working, it's still building, it's still developing. So as long as you're at that place right now where you've completed your assignments from before and you have that foundation already built, what's going to come next is going to move rather, I wouldn't say easily, but it's going to be much smoother at this point. If you're not there, again, don't give up. Okay, that's really what this class is about, is persevering, because, and I'll just have a little side note here, perseverance is probably one of the most important academic attributes, okay, because you're always going to come up against roadblocks in research. There's always going to be a moment where you're going to feel like you can't go forward, or you're kind of stuck. And it's really about persevering and trying to work around those roadblocks or those barriers and try to either go around them, re-strategize your approach and go around another way, or just to break through it. It just takes time. And sometimes, whether it's a block in research or writer's block and actually in the composition stage, you just have to be patient with yourself and with the process. You still need to be productive, of course, and there is a deadline, so you kind of have to weigh that out. The obstacle versus how much time you have. So please contact me if you do experience some kind of obstacle, and hopefully we can try to get you around that. So hopefully you have this body of research, you have an outline, you have a working thesis statement that you're going to now move into the composition stage. What I suggest is don't attempt to write an A paper on the first night or the first day or even the first week or even the first draft. This is draft 1. Okay, so it is a rough draft. It's not expected to be perfect. Now, some of you might be okay with that and say, well, I don't claim to be a perfect writer. I don't claim to, or I'm not even going to attempt. I'm just going to give you what I have. And to a degree, that's okay, but I still want you to strive for quality work. Okay, I don't want you just to settle for, okay, well, I'm just going to just throw something together and hopefully, that will get me a grade. Well, I really want you to put some effort into this first draft, but it is not the final draft. It is still a polishing. There's still polishing that comes later. There's still refinement that comes later. So don't try to submit your final draft now. And even if you did feel like, hey, I can't do any better than this, just wait, because you can. A paper, an essay, an article can always be better. There's always room for improvement, no matter what level you're at, whether you're an undergraduate or a graduate student, there's always room for improvement. So I just want you to be patient. I want you to take those first steps in drafting your first draft. What I would like you to attempt, and this is really up to you, how do you want to approach this, but I would like you to make an attempt to just write to start off with, just write the introduction and your conclusion. Just write that, okay, in the beginning. Write your introduction and your conclusion. These two things should mirror one another, as I've said before. Then, once you've written a rough draft of those two paragraphs, two sizable paragraphs of your introduction with thesis statement, your opening paragraphs of the paper, write your concluding paragraphs of the paper, which will reflect the introduction, and then go through and then write your body paragraphs, okay? Your rough drafts of those body paragraphs. That will then help to better the chances of a cohesive, logical paper that follows your outline. Okay? If you don't want to do it that way, that's okay. You don't have to. And this is part of the writing process. This is part of you developing your own approach. That's just one way. You could do the opposite if you wanted to. You could write just the body paragraphs first and then try to piece together the introduction. Or you could just sit down and write from the beginning to the end, however you wish, okay? What I want to encourage you to do is do some pre-writing before you start this. Get your ideas flowing. Just as you were trying to get your ideas flowing on the topic and on the thesis statement of how you wanted to approach this, get your ideas flowing on the writing itself. You might even sit down and just do a free write, which means no consideration of grammar, no consideration of any formalities. Just write. Sit down and start writing. That will break up any blockage or distractions that you might have. It'll just get you to start writing. And you can go back and read over that and see maybe where are some good starting points in that. But that's up to you. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. However, whatever strategy you want to take to begin drafting, what I don't recommend is just sitting down with a blank screen in front of you and then thinking, what am I going to write? I've done this. It is not productive. You can sit there for 2 hours and have one paragraph, and I've done it many times. When I finally began to understand the writing process and the whole role of free writing and pre-writing and preparation, I began to do less and less of that. When I began just to focus on the introduction, I began to be more productive. So however you want to approach this, I don't recommend just sitting down in front of a blank screen or a blank piece of paper and just thinking, what am I going to write about now? That can take hours. So avoid that, especially in this type of a class that time goes by quickly. An hour wasted is an hour lost, unfortunately. So you don't have the virtue of time of a 16-week course. So we're going to be wrapping up in about 3 weeks. If you want to, for this paper, 2 weeks, really. You don't have much time. You have this draft, the next draft, and your final draft. So you have 3 drafts. So we don't want to waste too much time. So whatever way you can put together in your own strategy, I would maybe look up pre-writing strategies, maybe go on Purdue OWL, look through our texts, look through our handbook. There are suggestions out there for you. Find your way. Find what your approach to this, okay? There's no one way. There is formality in how the paper should be structured, of course. It should have that broad introduction that narrows into a thesis statement, which is a conclusion of that information. It's a logical argument that would take place based on the background and context information that you had provided. Then your paragraphs, they go in a logical, argumentative progression from point to point, right? And you may have subpoints that are in there as well between your main points that you'll be dealing with in separate paragraphs. So you want to be thinking uh, thesis statement, okay, introduction, thesis statement, topic sentences, very important. Topic sentence, every paragraph should have a topic sentence that provides the specific point or specific main idea of that paragraph. If there's no topic sentence, it's really just kind of a mixture of words, like sentences that may or may not be related to one another. The topic sentence is the anchor. If you don't have an anchor, your paragraph's just going to drift. And it's not really, the meaning and the clarity is going to suffer. So every paragraph should have a topic sentence. Every paragraph should have some kind of supporting detail, some explanatory detail of that topic sentence. There would ideally be a quote from a source to support what you've presented in that topic sentence. From that, there would ideally be some analysis, some breakdown of that quote, discussing how it relates to your topic sentence and ultimately the thesis statement. And then a concluding statement or concluding phrase in that paragraph that kind of ties up and wraps up that paragraph like a nice, neat little package. Uh, then the following paragraph would have some type of transition to where there's some connecting idea between paragraphs. It's always best to avoid like jumps from one paragraph to the next, jumps in one idea to the next. You want some kind of transition or a ramp, if you will, to get you from one idea to the next. Okay, so be thinking that transitions, uh, and I explained all of that in the Essay Essentials uh, PowerPoint presentation that I posted for week 3. So continue to use that. That's going to really be what I'm looking for in the substance of the mechanics and the formatting of your final essay. So again, review that. I'm just kind of going over some of that material already. And then so then remember your conclusion. After you've already developed all of your paragraphs, your conclusion is a restating or it's a summarization of all of your points, your main points, and then uh, a statement of how they support your thesis. So therefore, therefore, in light of this information, one may reasonably conclude that then your thesis statement restated, not necessarily verbatim, but restated in a way that really directs the reader back to your thesis statement, so they can see this nice connected chunk of information that's being discussed in your paragraphs and your thesis, your introduction, and your conclusion. It becomes a block, a unit of information that can be understood properly and it's understood clearly. That's what we want to aim for with our papers. Okay, so what I want to emphasize is the drafting process is a composition element of the writing process where you are not necessarily attempting to complete your final draft in one draft. It is drafting. It is first draft, second draft. If we had the luxury of a third draft, then final draft, we would have that third rough draft, but we don't. And you may feel like you want to avoid this. Like, I don't want to go through all this drafting. I just want to submit my paper. I have experienced on my own feedback from professors where if you just would have taken the extra time to edit more or revise more, you would have ended up with a better grade. So really, this is going over and over and refining your paper is really a way of ensuring that your grade will get better. Each draft should get better because you're refining those mistakes that you may have made in those initial drafts. So it is beneficial. There's no published writer out there that publishes an article in one draft. There really isn't. It just goes against. It's like trying to make a film in one take. It may happen if they're really good, but it's very rare and very rare. It's the exception. So the norm is to go through the drafting process. Okay, so try to embrace that. I know it's hard. It was hard for me. It was frustrating for me because I just wanted to let me just turn it in. I just want to just turn it in and get my grade. No, we're going to go through this. You're going to learn how to edit. You're going to learn how to revise. You're going to learn how to write a quality paper, which is what your professors will be looking for in your other classes. So to take away from this video is embrace the idea of a process and the drafting stage, and not try to write an A in a day, but to do your best, provide your best work, but always leave that open for refinement and revision. Okay. All right. So if you have any questions, please email me. Please let me know. I hope this video was helpful to you, and hopefully provided some hope for you if you're struggling. If you're not, that's okay. But there will always be room for struggle in one way or another. You may not have struggled in anything thus far, but you may struggle through this process and just the having to go through these drafts. So it's okay. You will make it through this. Just continue to persevere, and looking forward to reading your work. All right. We have a great day, and certainly thank you for all the work that you put in so far in this class for week 5. All right. Take care.